By popular demand, I'll be answering questions posted by viewers, and I want to thank all who participated and posted your questions, and I'll do my very best to answer them. So let's get started. How powerful is the Albanian mob currently in New York City? As for what their power is presently, I honestly have no idea. What I can say is they became very big players in narcotic trafficking in Europe, even doing business with the Ndrangheta. In fact, it's been reported the Albanians are monopolizing the drug trade due to the latest Ndrangheta arrest. When the books were reopened in '75, do you think too many guys were made? First, I believe the year they reopened the books was 1976. They were initially closed in 1957. One of the reasons was the disaster that took place at the abolition meeting. But more importantly, they wanted to prevent the sale of buttons. Supposedly, Albert Anastasia was selling membership for $50,000. In addition, they wanted to prevent informants from being inducted, and this was mainly at the urging of Carlo Gambino, and the books were closed. When the books reopened, I believe they permitted each family approval to induct 10 guys. So my answer, if I think too many guys were made, is what's an army without soldiers? I gotta laugh out of this next question. Here it is. One thing that's occurred to me reading a lot of recent mob stories are the ages of inductees and present members. A lot of these guys could be in retirement homes, but they're still out there on the street. After you got made, did you encounter many associates or prospects for a button under the age of 45? We would call them associates. Prospects is usually for bikers. I agree about the ages, especially of the guys that were recently inducted. In my time, there weren't a lot of younger guys around. I remember meeting the kid Paulie Roastbeef, who was in Stevie Korea Jr.'s crew in the Bronx, but not many other young guys. I think it's best to use Scotty Gervasi's words. And Scotty Gervasi was a member of my old crew. And here's what he had to say on this subject. There's nobody out there to straighten out. Where's our future? I no longer support that life, but they should close the books. Or better yet, forget organized crime and completely go legit. Do you think Tommy Patera fits the criteria to be labeled as a serial killer and not just a typical hitman? I didn't know Tommy Karate, he was before my time. But from what I know about him, I would have to say that he fits a serial killer's profile. In that life, doing a piece of work is business. However, once you start taking pleasure in it, there's something deeper going on under that bonnet. For the record, I by no means am trying to say that taking a life is okay or moral. Obviously, it's not. If your boss gets you a no-show job, do they expect some of that to be kicked up? I guess he means your pay. The answer would be no. For example, let's say your captain gets you a no-show job. He's doing it to help you earn, not to put his hand in your pocket. But I guess that depends on your captain. I quickly want to mention the super thanks icon that's under this video for anyone who'd like to support the channel. Do you see a future for the mob in the tech world? Since most theft is done by identity theft, would the mob go in that direction? The answer is simple. The mob goes in any direction it can make a dollar. If the tech world is where the money is, they'll get involved if they haven't already. In your opinion, which mobs have represented your former life the best? I've met a few guys that are memorable, true blue gangsters and true to the life. But I'd have to say that Lorenzo Menino stood out among the rest. He was the perfect gentleman who understood and respected the rules, but more importantly, he applied them. Are there rivalries between families? As in, is there any specific tension between families that makes relationships or getting business done difficult? It can happen. In my time, our family had a great deal of animosity towards the Bonanno family. And this was the result of the Bonannos crewing up and forcing their way into our club in the Bronx and causing a scene there. I remember being told not to do business with them unless it fully benefited us. Whenever Big John heard the Bonannos come up, he would go on and on about how much he hated them. And as most people know, he was in the club that day when they came in. Are you aware of Sicilian Cosa Nostra and Calabrese Ndrangheta operating in Queens, Long Island, Westchester, etc.? I'm really not sure. Not long ago, there was an investigation into the Ndrangheta conducting business on Long Island. So I'm sure there's a lot more of that taking place across the United States. Is the consigliere position supposed to be a position someone gets for life? And is it elected or appointed? It's not a lifetime position, and it's typically picked by the boss. However, if need be, the position could be voted on, especially if the boss requests a vote. There was essentially a dress code for made guys. Included being clean-shaven, are rules like this enforced? There's no official dress code. If anything, over the last 2 decades, guys are dressing down. As I mentioned in my last video, you should be clean-shaven and look presentable. Can a capo appoint an associate over a made guy? Was that the case for Gotti being acting capo for Carmine Fatico before he got made? To begin with, in 1972, Charlie Wagons got into legal trouble and had Gotti run the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club, where most of the guys were from Gotti's Fulton and Rockaway crew in East New York. Personally, I'd never heard of an associate running a crew. Wise guys are not taking order from an associate, it's the other way around. If someone is taken down, like a captain broken down to a soldier, is it possible to get your rank back? Yes, you could be taken down from a captain's position and later in time get that position back, or even get a position in the administration if given the opportunity. Do you know why Michael Franzese and Gaspipe did not have a sit down regarding the tax scam? I think the best person to answer that is Michael himself. I believe they were dealing with different people. When it comes to big money making scams like that, or scams like the window case, etc., usually it's the bosses that work out how it should be cut up. So unless guys that were involved in the gas scam around Michael had problems with Gas's people, there would be no reason for them to have a sit down. I still don't understand how Vic and Gas were able to whack Buddy and walk away unscathed. Most likely the reason is Tony Ducks, Tom Mick Santoro, and Christy Tick, the Lucchese administration, were all indicted on the commission case. After the indictment, they picked Luongo, Vic, and Gas to replace the administration. So when Luongo disappeared, what were they supposed to do? Basically, they let the chips fall where they may. There are Italians of foreign descent, originally from Africa or elsewhere in Italy today, who hold Italian passports and speak Italian fluently. Would they be allowed to join Cosa Nostra in Sicily or the 'Ndrangheta in Calabria as made men instead of just associates? Since 2014, there's been over 500,000 refugees and asylum seekers that have entered Italy. Naturally, they learn the language, the culture, but they're still not Italian or Sicilian by blood. So the answer is no. What is happening in Italy is the mafia is using Nigerian migrants to do their dirty work, especially as drug mules. And in some instances, they're killing them as well. What gets someone shelved, and how do they get unshelved? I believe I've answered this several times in the past. There's many things that you could get shelved for. There's been guys who were shelved over taking pleas in court where they admitted to their membership. Also, breaking rules can get you shelved, etc. And this isn't just some small, insignificant thing that takes place. Again, it's the equivalent of getting killed. As they would do years ago, you were getting trunked, not shelved. And there is no getting yourself off the shelf. You could remain on the shelf indefinitely. And the only way you're taken off is if the administration decides to take you off for some reason. For instance, as they did to Ernie Grillo. The Gambinos put him on a shelf, and over time, the Sicilian faction took him off. And now he's a captain, and that's just the way the life is. You're up one day and down the next, or vice versa. I'll end with this last question on a positive note. So many times it's the negatives that get asked for or that get highlighted. Is there any positive takeaways you got from your time in that life? Like stuff that translated outside of it and that maybe you realized was gold advice despite an unusual source? As for lessons, there were many I learned, especially from the Sicilians. It was their nature to sit back and watch a person's actions very closely. I would say almost daily, I put to use things or lessons learned from my former life. And I don't mean what I'm about to say as a negative, because it actually has a positive effect. I mostly learned how not to act and learned that from the people in my former life. Don't get me wrong, there were a lot of nice guys in that life. For example, Joe Camerano, the former Bonanno acting boss. Joe was not only a total gentleman, but he was extremely humble. And in my opinion, the fact that they shelved Joe was a loss to the life and a favor to Joe because he's better off now. To sum it all up, I think the greatest advice I ever got came from my grandmother, who always said the following 3 words: less is more.